Hello friends, it's time for another Good to Know Monday tip. It's titled, How to Overcome the Doubter's Disease. In last week's Good to Know Monday tip, I talked a little bit about how we can remove the limiting control that we place on ourselves and on our destinies by asking ourselves the wrong kinds of questions. I said that when you ask the right kinds of questions of yourself, you control your focus, which drives your thoughts, which produce your feelings, and they move you to certain actions. And those behaviors and actions bring about good or bad results, and those results direct your destiny. Well, today I wanted to follow up on this principle with the principle that helps a person overcome the doubter's disease. I want to share a story about a man whose life's story confirms what I said about the questions we ask ourselves. His name was W. Mitchell. W. Mitchell was in a horrific plane crash, but was able to survive it, even though 2/3 of his body was burned badly. Even after this crash, W. Mitchell felt positive about his life. Somehow, he found the strength to not only endure the crash, but thrive after it. Years later, even after losing the use of his legs and being confined to a wheelchair, W. Mitchell still found the mental fortitude and capacity to contribute to other people's lives. Now, you might be asking, how did he do that? Well, the answer is he learned to control what he chose to focus on. He learned how to ask himself the right questions, like I said. He found himself in the hospital, his body burned beyond recognition, surrounded by a number of other patients throughout this wing of the hospital, all of whom were feeling sorry for themselves. Yet he, W. Mitchell, chose a different focus. Those patients were asking themselves, why me? How could God do this to me? Why is my life so unfair? What's the use of living as a cripple? Etc., etc. W. Mitchell, however, on the other hand, chose to ask himself questions like, what can I learn from this horrific experience? How can I use it to serve other people and help them overcome their pain? Now that I've had this kind of experience, what will I be able to contribute to the world? These questions were the difference in his focus, and that focus changed his destiny. The why me kind of questions rarely produce positive results, while the how can I use this to help others, what can I learn from it, in other words, kind of questions usually leads a person in the direction so that they're able to turn their difficulties into a driving force that make the world a better place, not only for themselves, but for the world. W. Mitchell believed that being angry about being hurt, frustrated, and fearful wasn't going to change his life for the good. And so instead of looking at what he no longer had, he said to himself, what do I still have? Who am I now, really? Am I only my body, or am I something far more than this zipped-on skin, as he called it? What am I capable of doing going forward? Can I be even more than I was before my accident? What great questions. After his airplane crash accident, while lying in his hospital bed, paralyzed from the waist down, he met an incredibly attractive woman, a nurse named Annie. With his entire face burned off, his body paralyzed from the waist down, W. Mitchell had the audacity to ask himself, how could I get a date with her? How could I get a date with her? When he asked his buddies what they thought of his question, they said, you're insane. You're deluding yourself. You're deluding yourself. But a year and a half later, W. Mitchell and Annie were in a relationship. And today she's his wife. That's the beauty and power of asking empowering questions of ourselves versus disempowering ones. Empowering questions produce a focus that attracts irreplaceable resources, the very answers and solutions we both desire and need. The law of faith versus the law of doubt says questions determine everything we do in life, from our ability to our relationships to our income. And so questions either call up doubts and fears, or they call up faith and belief. Let me repeat that. So questions either call up doubts and fears, or they call up faith and belief. From this, I hope you decide to make sure you ask yourself questions that removes fear and doubt whenever these kinds of experiences show their ugly faces. Here's an example of what I mean. Many people fail to commit to a relationship simply because they keep asking themselves questions that calls up fear and doubt to their mind. Questions like, what if she says no, or what if he says no? What if there's somebody better out there? What if I commit myself now and miss out on something much better? Man, these are questions from a mind that is infected by what I call the doubter's disease. This mental thought disease calls up terribly disempowering questions whenever we're confronted with anything or any opportunity like what I just said. These kinds of questions will keep us from ever enjoying not only what we already have in our life, but what we could have. A wise billionaire businessman once said, ask yourself, what's the downside? What's the worst that could happen? And then ask yourself, can I handle it? If the answer is, I can handle it, even when you consider the worst case scenario, then you should go ahead and do the deal, because the upside will always take care of itself, end quote. Let me add just one more point to this principle of asking empowering questions, which sets you up with the right focus that will attract the right opportunities into your life. Remember, it's not only the questions you ask yourself, but the questions you fail to ask yourself that shape your destiny. Too often we're afraid to ask those get honest with yourself kinds of questions because we're afraid of what the answers might be. I say, go ahead, ask them. A genuine quality of life comes from asking ourselves consistent, quality, honest questions, which is of the first step of success that I talked about, getting honest with ourselves. Okay, before I let you go, let me take just a moment again and invite those of you who have not had a private coaching session with me yet to go ahead and sign up for one. It's free. It's on my nickel. If you look at the email that this video link was on, there's a link that says free coaching with Coach B. Click on it, a calendar will come up, set it up, and I look forward to chatting with you and answering your questions. Okay, I'm done with the invitation, and so until next Monday, when I'll have another Good to Know Monday tip, I want to always end these little video tips with, I wish you all continued success. Goodbye.